Wow, we got such a massive response to that start video. I'm not surprised. I mean, I know what we're showing you is not what you're seeing on the in the main. You know, it's not what you're seeing when you go online and look at how to start a picture. And I do mean to give you a demonstration one of these days, but this is unique. What we're talking about here, this is strictly painting by the look of nature, literally by the look of nature, not by with underlying drawing of any kind, not from not from a construction drawing point of view, not from an academic outline drawing point of view. It's literally drawing by the points, drawing by the effects. Right. And by the way, Degas clarifies that in his own writing. He talks about we're not painting light, we're painting light effects. Right. So, but that way of painting, where you paint actual look of nature at various spots and learn to locate them in relation to each other and then build. And it's a combination of mass and line and all that sort of thing. I can understand why you're fascinated by it, and you ought to be. I mean, it's so liberating. So, and that's just me talking. What do you know? What you don't have to believe a word I say, but do try it. I mean, I love Gavel's comment once about this, and I know it came straight from the boss's quote. He said, "You have nothing to lose but your chains." Seems like a timely quote these days. But so let me just pop up here the question from. I do have to do. I'm a little behind, a little ahead of myself, I guess I should say. So I have to get this slideshow up here. Here we come. So I'm going to pop Melih, and tell me how to pronounce that. Would you send me some sort of a phonetic or a comparative, a word that sounds like that? Your name. I'll use it properly, but I want to say Melih, and leave it myself with an H. You sort of stop at the end. But in any case, you put out the first question, I think, which was about, could you show us, step by step, by sort of a sequence of photographs, which I've done. And I'm going to go back to some of these photographs now, but you asked some questions that you will find you may need to know the answer to, but you're presuming things that we don't do. And I'll start with this. Number one, and by the way, they're numbered here. Thank you for doing that. But number one, we paint as simply as possible. Oil paint comes with linseed oil in it, typically. Sometimes safflower oil instead or something. However, that's the only medium we use, period. We don't use any solvents. So get that out of your mind. Paxton's idea was the simplest is the best. And he's absolutely right, and it's very typical of our guys. We don't glaze. We don't use varnishes inside. And I've experimented with all those things, looking for best processes. And I find each one of them has as much of a drawback as a benefit. Stay simple is the Paxton advice. Keep it as simple as you can. Well, that's oil paint as it comes, except that every once in a while you need it to be thinner, and that's a point you do that's well taken here. But so let's ask the questions as they come up. And I really do appreciate the idea of follow-up. I put that out there, and your follow-up is really great. So I hope this doesn't come in such a distance away that you're not, you've forgotten everything. Go back and review talk number 87, if that's the case, if you don't know what the world we're talking about. I will just tell you some of the same images. I'll probably use some of the same images here. But the question is, as you can see it there, if we paint two shapes next to each other with high contrast, let's say black and white, or with complementary colors, would not it be muddy when we try to sharpen or fix edges later? And I assume by fix you mean correct edges later. So we don't. So this is very much the point, though. You understand, when we bring two edges together, we articulate the look of nature at that spot, as like as we can. That's the Bonnat model. So we're not bringing edges together mindlessly and then coming back to deal with them later. We go put them together, we make them as like as we can. In the course of the lay-in, now this is a key to our way of painting, in the course of the lay-in, when everything is wet, you can find yourself in some dilemmas, but you can pull out a rag and pull off the paint. Get your palette knife out, pull off the paint, and rethink it. That's the nice benefit of this start. However, but it does require you to know, and I think I said it earlier. Maybe I missed it saying it in that last chat, but you have to end the day with your major top readers, their best players, your best light effects, and their drawing and all that stuff that relates to them as far as you can. It has to be as like as you can possibly make it, because it's then going to dry, and you don't want to have to move, for example, a light, as you sometimes see Sargent doing. He has a nice white shirt, and you see where the jacket used to be, then move the jacket the white over onto the move the jacket over, and now it's coming back, some 50 years later in his case. It's showing an echo under there because whites get more transparent with age. But no, so it wouldn't make any difference if it was black and white. The high contrast, that's where you have to solve it, though. So would it be muddy when you try to sharpen the edges later? No, it won't be muddy. In fact, what you want to do is freshen up when you're going to paint it later. And let's say that you mean later, meaning after it's dried. And you want to hit that, you improve that note. You're going to freshen up that color. You're going to make it more beautiful. And now you have more data, by the way, so you can even make it even more beautiful. You're going to make it more beautiful the second time out. By the way, do be sure to retouch the canvas so that you're not dealing with dried-in stuff, okay? So put retouch varnish on it. Don't hesitate. Just don't overdo it because you'll make a nasty surface and create problems. But get enough on to bring the life back to both the light and the dark, and especially colored lights. And so what we're saying, though, so won't it be muddy? No, because you're going to push the lights out again into the dark, which is dry, and then you come back and draw with your darks with a nice fresh brush. And I recommend you draw a few times. In other words, draw with your brush. How can we do this? Let's say the light is here, and I'm the typical dark against this light. We push this light out into the dark, and we go and redraw through here. And you draw further over for a couple seconds, a couple times. Give yourself a few shots at it before you bring it to exactly the right place. And they'll give you a moment or two to experiment, to find the line you really want, and then to actually articulate it, as it were, for the last time. But don't keep fudging around in there, because that is exactly what you'll do. You'll start muddying it all up. Don't be fixing and mocking at edges and whacking at them and poking at them. I mean, just don't do that. Articulate with a blown-on, beautiful line. Now, to do that really well, and it may come up in your questions later, I think it does, to really do that well, to get the right sharpness of edge, does require you to have the right brush in your hand, the right wetness of paint, etc., right? So let's take number two. In your approach, by the way, this is not an important painting. This is actually a memory-based experiment. But you can see a spot like this where I've moved that mountaintop several times. I think you should be able to see this pretty good. Sometimes I turn it till I get too much light. But there's no filth in that. It's absolutely a beautiful, clean, by the way, changing from light blue yellow to yellow to a redder yellow. And then it's cut off beautifully and cleanly. I can move that a dozen times. I'll never have a dirty, muddy problem. Not at all. But make sure that you're getting the answer to your question. Maybe you mean something else, okay? Number two, in your approach, do you start with thinner? Again, I'll just answer that. I've already answered that. I don't use thinner at all. Thinners are solvents are color breaker. They destroy. They don't help. They're not good for anything except cleaning brushes. Or cleaning paint off maybe from time to time, cleaning it off your palette. I mean, don't use solvents, okay? Use linseed oil. That's it. You don't need to get thinner than that. You don't want to be thinner than that. It's a good binder. But the solvents are breakers, okay? They dissolve. They're solvents, dissolvers, right? If you approach, do you start with thinner? No, I don't start with thinner, but I start thinner. Okay, you with me? I start more thinly in the lay-in. We have a thick over thin rule, which you must know about, you must have heard of. It's always thick over thin. So the first time out there, you use as much color as you need to get the color quality really good, right? But no more than that. Don't get it thick because you need to make adjustments to it. And if it's thick, you will have problems making mud and junk and stuff, the piles of paint. You won't get good edges, nothing. So let's say, and then by using oil-dense solvent to paint the details, no. So everything we do is the same. Every time you're painting what you call a detail, you may move a value to create a form idea, and then you'll do a drawing where there's a silhouette. It's always exactly the same problem, right? You push the lights over and draw with your darks. Clean, okay? Never changes. And that's what you're seeing in those paintings. After I talk about these things, just a simple answer to your questions, I'll go back and see if I can revisit, if anything in those pictures makes me think of that. But by the way, I would suggest to you, at one point Gamble said something quite interesting. He said he was looking at the Turkish Sentinel by, I want to tell you it's by Barg, it may be by Jerome, but he says, and we don't even know how they managed to make that skirt. And what that skirt was a series of folds, what you call them, pleats, side by side by side by side, over and over. One of them more beautiful than the next, all clean, all nice. not dirtied up or anything like that, very articulate drawing. And you will find in the course of doing this, even when you're working in areas that have a lot of little fine, one event, like my fingers, one event after another, that working the way I do, there's a requirement to paint in a certain order. You can put these points in, but you'll still have to paint one before the other just to manage that area, to make it come together in a consistent way. But don't assume that means we're painting the painting. You don't have to paint a painting from top to bottom. It doesn't mean that. But sometimes in areas you have to move from left to right or from right to left or from whatever just because of the circumstances. So that's another discussion that I can't possibly. So much of this stuff requires you to be in the room. Oops, I did not mean to do that. All right. So now, like eyelashes, I mean, I suggest to you that it's a rare day that you're actually painting eyelashes, and if you're thinking big. I mean, because you don't need them for anything. The hyper-realist has his own problems, and good luck with that stuff, okay? Now, it doesn't mean I can't paint eyelashes if I happen to choose to, but when you get to that level of detail, that means you have to be at that level of detail all over your painting. At that point, if you haven't already won, I mean, you're barking up the wrong tree, right? If you're in that level of detail and you haven't already succeeded in the aesthetic, my golly, what is the point? So we're not. This isn't realism 101. I tell you, realism is part of the problem. This is a process of looking at nature, studying what's in front of you, even a portrait, and asking yourself just exactly what are the aesthetic qualities. They all happen way before you get to little fine little stricken eyelashes. But even if you do eyelashes, I suggest that the way we do it, it'll be better for you. But no, there are times when you'll paint thinner for that reason, use significantly less paint and wetter paint, so you can articulate much more finessed contours. And so it's not that you're flat wrong. It's just that I highly recommend you look. If you're talking to us, you're talking to Velasquez. Look at the way Velasquez handles eyelashes. But that's another story. So okay. But still, as I said, it applies. You try to keep almost every edge soft at first. Now, this is where you completely miss what I'm doing. And partly that's because that student looks like she's doing that, but it's not what's going on. And I'll show you, and that's where I'll show you her work. And Lynn, forgive me if I'm picking on you, okay? I'm not trying to. In fact, your work is good, so I can just say that, okay? If you try to keep almost every edge soft at first, except some anchor points, then as time goes on, you add some extra hard edges. You go from soft edges to hard edges. Is that correct? And so the answer to that, Melih, is no. We work from lost to found. When you find something, you articulate the look of nature at that spot. But you don't paint fake edges and stuff like that. You don't paint false looks anywhere. No, I don't do that. Other people do. I don't. I don't do that. I know who you're talking about. I know the kinds of people that do that. It's not me. It's not us. Okay? If you look at the Boston School, you don't find falseness. You find when they do an edge, they do it to the look of nature, or they don't do it at all, right? You don't find falseness in them. There's an order to the edges. When you put it on an edge, you have a responsibility to make it right to the other edges, not to just make some edges all soft everywhere and then go around. It's one of those things where I was talking to Gamel. I think I've mentioned it before about Chardin, and it was a question that always comes up about the edges. And so I was asking Gamel when, there's a wonderful variety in the edges of Chardin. I asked him when, in fact, he did those variations in the edge. And Gamel implied in his answer that we paint sharp edges. We just cut out outlines like we do, like we were doing as students at the time. And you can always patch up the edges later. And that's just not the way to think, okay? That's not holistic thinking. When you put down something, it's got to be itself for the other thing to be itself to it. Okay? That's a game. So let me show you a picture or two, okay? I did not mean to be glib, by the way, okay? I know this is serious stuff, and I do appreciate you guys' involvement. If I just look at the involvement in querying with me, I mean, discussing this with me. Let's go to a part where she's actually painted a bit. Now, do you see here this, what she didn't do that I do is I keep my colors far apart from each other, right? Now, there are areas like this where you could say a soft edge, but really you're just saying there's no edge. You're saying there's nothing. This just dark just transitions into the light, or else I don't do it, okay? That's what you can see is plainly happening there if that photograph is accurate. So, right, so we keep on going. Now, here you see that that's what she's done, and that's where I wouldn't get anywhere near there. The canvas would still be blank with me. I would not be doing that edge. if I'm going to put this against that, I'm going to cut it out, right? I don't run them on to each other unless I can honestly say that I think that's just lost. Down here, you could see that could be said just to be a run-on. But then you would just run it on because you'd be drawing from just this big, you'd be drawing from this edge, maybe sweeping a value, getting darker and darker, and finally you'd cut it off over there. That kind of unity, that's true lostness, though. That's different, okay? So falseness is not one of your, it will not benefit you. You'll wind up falsely soft. Did I say falseness? I meant softness. You'll wind up falsely soft. And a number of my friends in from the same background do. And some people think that's an advantage. I mean, Greuze is an example of a guy who's falsely soft all through his paintings. And the truth, the lack of truth in that is powerful, especially if you're an impressionist. Now, if you're an imaginative painter and you're making your aesthetic expression or you're trying to even say something, some mood or something or other, do whatever the heck you want. But when you're teaching students and when you're talking Boston School, you're talking about the truth of the relationships at all points. And an attempt to at least be there, okay? So try to avoid the falseness. So I'll just get back if I can too. So that's what I'm saying in any number of places here. This is one point where I was actually pointing out to her at the time that we can't be doing this. We don't bring this next to that and not draw, okay? Now, conceivably in a place like this, you could, if you blur your eye and that's completely just transitions into, but I'd see some bony thing there. Is that my canvas? But that's where I just flat avoid that kind of stuff. She thinks she can run this on here. It doesn't look like she probably should have in this light, but I can't make that point. But you see what she's done here. She's got the difference. She's got the right kind of an edge here. That is a soft edge, and she said it right. That's dead on the money about the way we think about it. And this is said right? So the right relationship between these two edges and their relationships to other edges is exactly right. This is not what, we don't do this, right? Making a shape out of this. Don't even be going for a soft edge shape. Don't bother. Stay away from them. When you get down here and you make this, you make it make as like as you can and get it right to the other ones, and you're working our way, okay? Do I need to say more about that? I'm going to look here and see if there's other points. See, where she's handling it this way, where you can say that's actually a loss, it's just beautifully transitions into this, and we don't have to discuss it. This thing here suggests that there's something to discuss there, and it's one thing to say we can avoid that now, but we probably will have it before that. We will definitely have it before the start's over, because you won't just leave this that way. So. But that wash could be very true and very effective just for a little bit, just as much as this could have been over here, except that I just keep them apart until I'm ready to actually, if I need to say something, if it's time to say something. For example, the right side of that little blip up there, then I just simply, if I'm going to do something up there, I do that. Otherwise, I just keep it white for longer. There's no reason why I have to close all these shapes in. Now, there are a lot of people who panic over the open areas. They don't know what to do with it, and it's confusing. But you have to use your imagination. You have to see between the lines, between the whites, okay? If with a little imagination, you can grasp this. You can get this. So, yeah, so it's much the same again. That's actually beginning to be actually a true edge. And so, hey, Lynn, who knows where you were at any point in this thing here. But you were really not making a soft shape here that you're then going to harden up the edge of. You just weren't. I mean, that's plain that you weren't doing that. Even here, you really aren't doing that, even though that might be a conclusion that people might draw from this. Okay, so, but I think that probably is all you need to hear for an answer to that question. So you see the same thing I'm showing you when you go over to actually make this. You make the look of nature here, and you compare it, get it right to this one, and right to this one, and right to all the other ones. So it's just the look of nature right away. Don't be out there making fuzzy edges. Okay. And that's the quick answer to that last one. I'm going to go back to your question to make sure if there's something else I might have missed. You're going to have to get back to me on this one. It's already been far longer than I thought I'd be able to do this in, which is what's new with me, huh? Yeah, I think we've covered it. So thank you, Melih, for following up with me, and tell me how to pronounce your name into the future if you can. All right. All right. Good. Take care, you all. See you in the very next video.